Andruw Jones is finally in the Hall of Fame. Why it took so long, and who's next?
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. Also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I am your host, Jake Mastroianni. I've been covering the Atlanta Braves in both the written and podcast form for over 10 years now. And once again, this is Locked On Braves, your daily connection to all things Atlanta Braves. On today's episode, we'll discuss Andruw Jones getting into the Hall of Fame, breaking down his historic night and historic career. We'll also talk about who could potentially be next. We're also going to dive into the payroll. How much have the Braves spent? What potentially is left? How would I spend what's left? We'll get into all that on today's episode, which is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff modes. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Well, it finally happened. We've been waiting on this for a while now. Us as Braves fans, this was a no-brainer for all of us. No bias in here at all. Andruw Jones should have been in a long, long time ago, but now he is officially a Hall of Famer as he gets 78.4% of the votes. You need 75% to get in, so it was a very slim margin there. In fact, Mark Bowman, MLB.com, broke it down for us. He said there were 425 ballots. He needed to be on 319 of them. He was on 333 of them. So doesn't matter, though. You get in by a little or a lot, you get in, and Andruw Jones is in the Hall of Fame. This was his 9th year on the ballot. You get a total of 10 years on the ballot, and you have to get at least 5% of the votes to stay on the ballot, which is very significant when you talk about Andruw Jones' path, because his first 2 years on the ballot, he only got 7%, which is just insane to think that Andruw Jones, the best defensive center fielder of all time, only got 7% of the votes on his first 2 years on the ballot, and then was able to get in. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, and I'll get into those here in a moment. But just to let you know the process of Andruw Jones and his voting results, it went from 7.3 to 7.5 to 19.4, took a big boost there, then up to 33.9, up to 41.4, up to 58.1, and then up to 61.2. And then last year was 66.2. Thought he might take a bigger jump than that, but was not the case. But this year took a 12% jump, going from 66.2 to 78.4 to finally get into the Hall of Fame in what was a long journey for Andruw Jones, but certainly worth the wait in the end. According to the great Sarah Langs, it is the lowest debut percentage to eventually be elected since 1966, and that's pretty much as far back as it goes with this specific scenario. So it is the lowest percentage of somebody that ever started out on the ballot, 7.3%, and they eventually rose to 78.4%. Which is just, again, it is insane to think that Andruw Jones started that low. And I think part of this is to blame, I think a large part of this is to blame on the steroid era. It's why I really haven't talked about the Hall of Fame much on here, just because I've given up on the system. It is just the steroid era has just really muddied everything. Now we're starting to get past that, which is good and great that we can finally move on from that. But it made guys like Fred McGriff have to wait for a long time. And then what happened is you had all of these great names, Barry Bonds of the world, that you just look at their numbers. They're no doubt Hall of Famers, but voters didn't know how to vote. So you had these guys continuing to stay on the ballot, and it was pushing down other guys who really deserved more of the vote, because, again, the Hall didn't make it clear for voters on how to vote on the steroid era. So you had some guys that said, I clearly think he's a Hall of Famer, whether he did steroids or not, and they're going to vote for him. And then you got some writers that says, I'm absolutely not voting for anybody suspected of steroid use. And so all of these names really muddied up the ballot, and it pushed down guys like Andruw Jones. But still, for him to only get 7% and then see him rise to 78.4%, because look, me personally, I'm a small hall guy. I always have been. I think it should be the elite of the elite. And so to see somebody start at 7% and ultimately get in feels cringe to me, quite honestly. But it's Andruw Jones. And again, I am a little bit biased, but I think he definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I think he is the greatest defensive center fielder of all time, definitely that I have seen. And I think that deserves to be in the Hall. For me to be in the Hall, you need to meet one of two criteria. You need to have a decade run of being considered one of the best players in baseball. And I think Andruw did that. I'll give you the numbers here in a second. Or you need to have done something that was just so beyond what we've ever seen done in the game before. And I think Andruw qualifies for that. Look, Ozzie Smith, I have his rookie card here behind me. He's the reason I am shortstop ball. It's the reason I fell in love with the position. I loved watching him play defense. It made me fall in love with the game as a kid, watching just the things that he could do on the field that nobody else could do. It was that same way with Andruw Jones. He just did things in center field you just never seen anybody else do. And so just for that alone, maybe you don't like the 254 batting average. Maybe you think he should have hit 500 home runs. Maybe you think he should have done more in his 30s instead of just falling off. But just for the defensive alone, I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And so I'm glad that he is in there because it is something the game's never seen before. And I think that alone deserved recognition in the Hall of Fame. Now, here are the numbers for Andruw Jones. Spent 17 years in the big leagues. Again, broke in really early as a 19-year-old. He slashed 254, 337, 486. So again, a lot of baseball purists, old heads, they're going to see that 254 average and immediately say that's ridiculous. Okay, I get that. But put the whole package into effect here. An 823 OPS, again, not necessarily anything to get all that excited about. 434 home runs. That's fantastic. Again, had it been baseball, fans and purists and writers too, the people that vote on this, had that been 450 plus, certainly would have made a huge difference. It's really not that many more home runs. It's maybe half a season's worth of home runs for Andruw Jones, but just to get that 450 mark probably makes a huge difference for a lot of people. Over 1,200 runs scored, over 1,200 runs batted in, 1,933 hits. There's another number two. Again, that's not a lot of hits away from 2,000. It's probably half a year's work for Andruw Jones, certainly in his prime. But if he were to hit that 2,000 hit mark, he's probably in a long time ago because a lot of voters, a lot of fans are going to look at those round numbers, those big numbers that stick out to you. And Andruw just fell short in a couple of those categories with home runs and hits. 62.7 B WAR though. According to Baseball Reference, AJ had the 14th highest B WAR among center fielders of all time. The only ones ahead of him that weren't already in the Hall of Fame were Mike Trout, who's obviously still playing, Carlos Beltran, who's getting in the same time as Andruw, and Kenny Lofton, who probably needs to be looked at again. I mean, and there are some guys below him too that were already in the Hall of Fame. So definitely worthy, I think, based on the numbers. But again, when you combine that with what he did in the field, 10 straight Gold Glove awards at a high demand position like center field, which I don't think enough people consider either. Normally center fielders later in their career, and especially the way Andrew's body grew, I guess you could say, a nice way to say it, he probably should have moved off and did, obviously, but the pounding that it takes, what you see a guy having to play in center field for that long and then toll that it takes on your body. Very, very different example. But this is just fresh on my mind because it happened with the Braves a few years ago with Adam Duvall. Gold Glover in left field, he's great. You put him in center field, he's fine, but you saw what it did to him at the plate. I think it had a real effect on Jared Kelnick. A couple of years ago when the Braves got him, he started out in left field. I thought he was really good defensively out there. You moved him to center field, and it's a much more demanding position. I think you saw him take a step back defensively and definitely offensively. He took a step back. It is a very demanding position, and he played it at a high level for 10 years, the best. Everybody just knew it, the best. I mean, you could just hand him the Gold Glove before the season started. He was that absurd. He was that unreal defensively in the outfield. He also was a 5-time All-Star. He won a Silver Slugger. He was 5th in Rookie of the Year. He got MVP votes in 5 different seasons, finishing 8th, 16th, 13th, 2nd, almost won an MVP. That certainly would have made a big difference in all this, and finished 11th one time. So again, very good player, 10-year run from 1998 to 2006. He posted a 4.9 or better B WAR in 8 of those 9 seasons. So again, that's your decade of excellence there, along with doing something that game's never seen before. It should have been a no-brainer. Should have been no doubt in anybody's mind that Andruw Jones would have been in the Hall of Fame a long, long time ago. A couple of more follow-ups from Andruw Jones getting in, and who all else got in, and the rest of the results. We'll get into that here next. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress of guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives a real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file your taxes last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. That's TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Thank you as always, making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. You'll get ad-free audio versions of the podcast, one-on-one text access with me and Lindsay, all access episodes with me and Lindsay, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store. Head to LockedOnBraves.supercast.com to join the Everydayer program and unlock all access. You can also find the link in the show notes. So I want to talk a little bit more about the Hall of Fame results here and why I partially think it took so long for Andruw Jones to get in. And I hate that I have to bring this up, but if I don't, somebody in the comment section will. So I'll go ahead and address it. And I think Lindsay wrote about this the other week too. I think the character clause was maybe part of the reason why it took so long for Andruw to get in, along with just the fall off when he got into his 30s, the low batting average, not hitting some of those milestone numbers, 450 home runs, 2,000 hits. But I think the character issue also played into it a little bit. And look, I'm not here to excuse what may or may not have happened. And I'm not going to, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. If you want to go Google it, you can and look for yourself. You all know how hard I was on Ozuna when all his off the field stuff was happening. So it's definitely not something I approve of, and I definitely think there should be some punishment for those types of things. Again, don't know legally ever was found out to be true that any of this happened, but certainly there were some allegations against him, and I think that's part of why it's taken him so long. Here's what I'll say about that. This isn't heaven. And what I mean by that is, and even with your entry into heaven, you can do a lot of bad things and still get into heaven. And this isn't even that. This is the Baseball Hall of Fame. This is to remember the history of the game. And again, there should be punishments. You make mistakes in life, there should be punishments for that. But if we're going to start gatekeeping bad people, or if we're going to try to keep bad people out of the Hall of Fame, you might as well go ahead and just clean out the entire Hall of Fame, because I can guarantee you there are a lot of people in the Hall of Fame already who have done some pretty bad things. And again, I'm not excusing what may or may not have happened with Andruw Jones. If he actually did what he's accused of, then he certainly should be punished for it. But again, this isn't heaven. This is the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I think he belongs in the Baseball Hall of Fame for what he did as a baseball player. So unless they just want to actually start carrying out the character clause, they actually want to start ruling on that and making it a thing, then that shouldn't be something that keeps Andruw Jones out of the Hall of Fame. Because like I said, otherwise there's a lot of people already in there that shouldn't be. if that's the way that we're going to go. So I just wanted to address that. Again, hate to even want to talk about that. But again, it is part of the story with Andruw Jones, so we have to at least mention it. Now, on to the rest of the Hall of Fame class. Carlos Beltran also gets in. He got 84.2% of the votes. The rest of some of the top vote getters, Chase Utley got 59.1% in his third year. I think he might get in, and I'd be okay with that. I definitely think he's borderline. When I think back to, that era of baseball, Chase Utley just in general has one of the sweetest swings. Definitely that, it's that sweet left-handed stroke. I think he was a really good baseball player. And I definitely think he is borderline. If I'm a Phillies fan, I probably think, he's a first ballot, but I would be okay with Chase Utley getting in because I think he's, really good second baseman, one of the best second baseman of his generation. Andy Pettitte got 48.5% in his 8th year. How is he still on the ballot? King Felix got 46.1% in his 2nd year. King Felix is somebody I think might get into it. If he were a Yankee, he's probably first ballot Hall of Famer. A-Rod still on the ballot somehow. He got 40% in his 5th year. And Nick Markakis, Atlanta legend, got 1 vote. Unfortunately, that's not going to be enough to keep him on the ballot, but pretty cool that Nick Markakis got 1 vote. Shout out to that Atlanta person, or it could be a Baltimore person, I guess, who gave Nick Markakis that lone vote there. Who could be next for the Atlanta Braves? Maybe Freddie Freeman, but that seems pretty doubtful now. When he left Atlanta, I would have said, no matter what happens, I shouldn't say no matter what happens, but when he left Atlanta, I said there's still a really good chance he goes in with the Braves. He won a World Series there. He won an MVP there. I felt pretty confident he would go in as a Brave, but now he's gone on to LA. He's won 2 World Series. He's won a World Series MVP. I just don't know that he's going in as a Brave anymore. I do think Freddie Freeman's going into the Hall of Fame. I don't think there's much doubt about that at this point. I think he probably goes in with a blank hat, unfortunately, unless somehow he makes his way back to the Braves and does something else really incredible, wins another World Series with them. I don't know. I mean, there's a chance he wins another World Series or 2 while he's with the Dodgers. So I think my hope at this point is that he goes in with a blank hat, because I'd be really mad if he goes in with a Dodgers hat. I think next is probably Dale Murphy. I think Dale Murphy is going to get in at some point on one of these, era committees that they have every year, which I don't understand, but either way, I think he probably gets in on one of those at some point. If not either of those, maybe Ronald. If Ronald were to have, even let's say Ronald leaves in free agency and he spends the second half of his career somewhere else, or maybe somewhere else's. If Ronald has a couple more big seasons with the Braves, maybe wins another MVP, maybe wins another World Series, I think no matter, I shouldn't say no matter what, because I said that with Freddie Freeman, and then he went out and did the no matter what part. I think even then, wherever Ronald goes, I think he could still go in as an Atlanta Brave. But outside of that, I don't know. Let me know. Maybe I'm missing somebody in the comment section, or maybe I'm missing somebody. Let me know in the comment section down below. But I really think it's Freddie Freeman, which I think is unlikely. I think it's most likely Dale Murphy. And I think down the road, maybe Ronald. But again, I could be missing somebody. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. All right, next, I want to get into the payroll update. Where are the Braves right now? How much is left to spend, and how would I spend it? How would you spend it? Let me know down below. We'll get into that here next. All right, so let's talk some numbers really quickly, as we're just a couple of months away from the start of the season, a month away from spring training. The team payroll, according to Fangraphs, currently sits at $262 million. The tax payroll at $258 million. Understand all these numbers that you see out there are projections. Only the Braves know the exact amounts, but these are going to be close, guesses, projections right now. So $262 million for the team payroll, $258 million for the tax payroll. Just a reminder that the luxury tax payroll, it goes based on the entire AAV for the player's contract. So that's why the tax payroll can be lower than the team payroll. We've seen in the past where the tax payroll was much higher than the team payroll. The luxury tax thresholds for the upcoming 2026 season are $244 for the first tier, $264 for the second tier, $284 for the third tier, and then $304 for the fourth tier. We've seen the Braves go up to that third tier before, which would be that $284 mark, so something below that. And here are the penalties for going over the luxury tax. For the first year, you get 20% tax on all overages. The second consecutive year, it's 30%, and then the third year, it's 50%, which is why you see a lot of teams, like the Braves did last year, try to reset that, because after your second consecutive year, if you then are under that next year, it resets everything and starts you back over at that 20% tax, which is what the Braves would have to pay this year on any overages. For going over the $264 million mark, there is a 12% surcharge. For going over the $284 million mark, there is a 42.5% surcharge. So that goes up a ton. And your highest selection in the next year's draft gets pushed back 10 spots unless you're in the top 6. And then your second highest pick gets moved back 10 spots. So that's why we've seen the Braves not want to go over that third tax threshold, because not only does the surcharge spike up tremendously, but then it also affects your draft position. For going over the $304 million mark, there is a 60% surcharge that really only the Dodgers and Mets have to worry about. The Braves tax total right now would be around a little less than $3 million, $2.8, $2.6 million, putting the team at total payroll at around $265 million. We don't know what that number is going to be. This is already higher than it's ever been before, but AA has talked about in the past that he just throws that tax they're going to pay on top of the team payroll, and that's kind of how he views it, but we don't know what that limit is. We're learning that as we go here. So how much is left for the Braves to spend? So assuming that Alex Anthopoulos wants to keep around 5 to 10 million available for during the season per usual, and assuming that the third luxury tax threshold that is the Braves' own self-imposed limit, there could be roughly $15 to $20 million left to spend this offseason, which should be more than enough to go out and make a solid move. And look, if that third tax threshold is your limit, there's no reason to not go ahead and spend that 15 to 20 million this offseason, just to get as much depth as possible. Look, it's not my money, but you want to give yourself the best chance to win. You want to get as much depth as possible. Don't leave any money on the table. So that's fine if you don't want to go over the third tax threshold. I get it, but you still got plenty of room to maneuver and still have some money left to save for during the season. So here's how I would spend that money. And this isn't necessarily in order. I'm just giving you 4 different options here. Option number 1, sign Chris Bassitt to a 2-year, $36 million deal. And this probably is my top option. Might be another one here later that would be better. I made the case for Chris Bassitt last week. You want to go back and give that a listen. I just think he fills a number of roles for the Atlanta Braves. I think he gives you a quality starter that is going to go deep in the games, that has been reliable over the years, and is somebody that if you had to start him in a postseason game, you'd be completely fine with it. And if you have to put him in the bullpen, you'd be completely fine with that, because we've seen him excel there. And he would be another good veteran leader who is a very, very big competitor, Chris Sale type of competitor. So there's just so many reasons for me. That's why he's top of my list to go out and get Chris Bassitt. So you got that money left, go get it done and go sign him to be that guy this year and next year. Option number 2, might have to do some more maneuvering, but you figure that out. But you trade for Nico Hoerner, who's expected to make $12 million in 2026, and then he'll be a free agent. And then you either go get Nick Martinez, Chris Paddock, Anthony DeSclafani, or Frankie Montas for $8 million or less. Let's talk about the Nico Hoerner part first. You obviously go get him to be your shortstop. You push Mauricio Dubon back to the bench. At that point, I mean, from what we unconfirmed, Jorge Mateo is making about $1 million. You could cut him if you had to. Figure that out. But you go get Nico Hoerner to be your shortstop, to give you some more depth there. Ha-Seong Kim comes back. You figure it out at that point. That's, almost 3 months into the season. Things are bound to have changed by then. So that's option number 2 for me. The second part of that doesn't have to be done. Definitely if you get Nick Martinez for that little, you do it. I don't think you can. But like a Chris Paddock, a Anthony DeSclafani, a Frankie Montas, the point of getting any of those guys would be just to have somebody as that role where we can start a reliever. There's a name for that, but I'm blanking on it at the moment. The problem with that is you already kind of have 2 of those guys in Bryce Elder and Joey Wentz. So it's not necessary that you go out and make one of those moves. You can maybe just use that money to get a solid reliever like somebody in my option 3, which is Lucas Giolito and Danny Coulomb. I don't know if you can get both of these guys for under $20 million, but of the non-qualifying offer guys, so Valdez, Suarez is gone now, but Valdez and Gallen, and then after Chris Bassitt, I think Lucas Giolito is probably the best name on the market. He turned down a $19 million mutual option with the Red Sox, so he's hoping to recoup more than that this offseason. He made 26 starts last year, had a 3.41 ERA, 145 innings with 121 strikeouts. He has had his ups and downs throughout his career. Again, Chris Bassitt is my number one option of the free agent starters out there, but I think Giolito would be a fine fallback if you could get him on a 2-year, $30 million deal, something like that. And then Coulomb, just to give you another lefty in the bullpen. He held lefties to a 526 OPS last year, although lefties did have a higher batting average against him, and that's been the case throughout his career for some reason, but also consistent throughout his career is that lefties have had a lower OPS. So again, he's really good against lefties and righties, but just gives you another lefty option in the bullpen. And then option 4, and this is probably going to be the one that a lot of you like the most. Trade for Freddy Peralta and sign Austin Hayes or Randall Grichuk. So the idea behind this is obviously get a top of the rotation type of arm in Freddy Peralta, who's only making $8 million this upcoming year. It's probably going to cost you a really good couple of prospects, maybe a J.R. Ritchie, a Lara, something like that. And you go out and get a right-handed bat like Austin Hayes, Randall Grichuk, who can crush left-handed pitching to platoon with Yaz in the DH spot and in the outfield. So those are the 4 options for me. Again, I think I like option 1 the best. Just go get Chris Bassitt. Go get the guy that I think is probably the best, free agent starter out there that you can get right now outside of, Framber, which maybe they don't want to sign him because of reasons. But, Freddy Peralta obviously would be a good get, but you're having to give up prospects for that. So, and he's only available for 1 year too. So you're giving up those prospects for 1 year of a guy for a pitcher who, like Ha-Seong Kim, I guess you can't just say it about pitchers, but could get hurt and you don't get anything for that 1 year that you have him. So I'd rather just go get the free agent. But let me know what you think of those 4 options, or do you have a better option? And some of you gave me some options on social media as well. Thanks so much for sending those in. A lot of them were similar to mine. A lot of you wanted Chris Bassitt. Some of you were wanting Austin Hayes too. So let me know what you think of those options out there, which one you think the Braves should go after. Just quickly running down some news. I mentioned the Jorge Mateo signing by the Atlanta Braves the other day in response to Ha-Seong Kim's injury. Haven't seen the salary officially posted, but unofficially I saw it was a $1 million deal. 30 years old, 6-year veteran, career 221, 266, 366 slash line, 75 WRC plus. Not to take a shot at Nick Allen here, but he has a career WRC plus of 53. So even then, Jorge Mateo is better offensively than Nick Allen. 3 of the last 5 years, Jorge Mateo had a WRC plus over 80. However, 2 of the last 3 years, it's been awful, including last year, which, again, not to take a shot at Nick Allen, but he was worse last year offensively than Nick Allen. But 106 steals and 127 attempts. He's played shortstop in every season that he's been in the big leagues, had 15 defensive run saves when he played there full-time for the Orioles in 2022. The metrics on him at shortstop have not been as great since then, but really small sample size as well, especially in the last couple of years. He is really fast. So bring some value to the bench, even if you don't need to use him at shortstop. Kind of replaces that Brujan type of role, last man on the bench, just kind of there in emergency. Maybe he gets some starts here or there. It's not like it's a platoon situation, as he's better against left-handed pitchers, which so is Dubon. But I think he's just going to be kind of your emergency guy, but also, like I said, bring some value as a pinch runner. The Braves also signed pitcher Sean Reed-Foley to a minor league Sean Reed-Foley to a minor league deal. 30-year-old right-handed pitcher was a top prospect back in the day. He has some familiarity with Jeremy Hefner as he pitched with the Mets from 2022 to 2024. Had a shoulder impingement in 2024 that really impacted him then and last year as well. He was pretty bad at the AAA level for both the Mets and the Diamondbacks. 28 innings and ERA over 7. But pitching in the Mexican Winter League this offseason in 14 games, 15 innings, he's allowed just 4 hits, 5 walks, no earned, with 18 strikeouts. And again, pairing him back with Jeremy Hefner, maybe the Braves will be able to find something there for him in the bullpen. And then not much happening around Major League Baseball. I had a ton of news last week, but kind of has died down. The Yankees have apparently put in their top offer to Cody Bellinger. The ball's just in his court. I'm losing my ability to say words at this point. The Mets also showing interest in Cody Bellinger. The Rangers assigned Jacob Junis to a 1-year, $4 million deal. So like I said, not a ton of news happening here as of late. But let me know your thoughts on all of this. A lot to talk about on today's episode. Andruw Jones getting into the Hall of Fame. Let me know what you think about that. Should he have been in a long time ago? Maybe you're a Braves fan that thinks he shouldn't be in. I would love to hear from you. I think most of us agree that he definitely should have been in already. Let me know who you think might be the next Atlanta Brave to get in. And let me know what you would do with the rest of the $15 to $20 million that AA might have left to spend this offseason. All right, that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back on Friday with our weekly mailbag episode. Look for a post from LockedOn_Braves on X Friday morning. Respond to that post with your question to be answered on Friday afternoon's mailbag episode. You can find me on Twitter at ShortstopBall. Again, the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves. We're also on Instagram and TikTok. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button and leave me a comment down below, as it does help out the show a ton whenever you do those things. Again, thanks so much for listening. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.